A somewhat somber one.
Yeah, I am a very sad flying Ryan Gokers along with.
Equally sad, Tampa Motor Mouth Joel Verlin is. Yeah, when you get three teams in the fantasy playoffs, and of course my Justin Fields team got knocked down at ooh. I'm going, okay, well, week 16, two teams still alive. Okay, so what's going to happen? We have three potential possibilities. Both teams get knocked out. What happened? One team could advance, one team could get knocked out, or both teams could advance. Yeah, neither advanced.
I had a few pure mutations. I still had 8 teams alive, and there's one left. There's just one left. The implosion that was Brock Purdy and Cortland Sutton doomed me in the 16-teamer, where Zach will go to the finals, where I will meet Joel in the third place game.
Oh yeah, I had Cortland Sutton in the league too. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
hopefully he's okay.
Yeah. I got Puka in the Sports Shuffle Fans 10-team league, where I will be playing Joel in the third place game.
Yeah,
One of
because
7 third place game appearances this year.
Cooper Cup didn't go off. Puka did.
And to make matters even that much more painful for me, the two leagues up here at the top, Little T Series and Family Feud. The Family League, my wife is going for a championship, so I might have to see the damn trophy at my house should she pull off an upset over her brother. And in A Little Too Serious, I complained about not making the playoffs due to incomprehensible tiebreakers. Not only was I robbed of a playoff appearance, I was robbed of a championship appearance because my team has gone very, very well the last couple of weeks. So yeah, instead of playing for the championship, we are playing for 7th place in both of those.
It's better than consolation, but it still sucks.
So yeah, a lot of third place games and a lot of pain. Didn't get Coopered, but still a rough week.
I'm sort of wondering who's going to be the dude that goes off for week 17, because we've definitely had some doozers. The 7 TD game from Alvin Kamara many years ago. Jamar Chase was doing it. Just kind of crazily. Even Mike Evans ended up having the year where he was quite all year and then just went freaking off in championship week.
Well, saying he's on a lot of my teams, and Pittsburgh likes to bounce back and forth between good and bad to the do for bad, I'm going to say DK Metcalf goes for a big game. And I'm going to be complaining about that tiebreaker costing me a championship. And also, if he would have done this last week, but in some finals, it's a whole different thing. Yeah, that's my early prediction for that.
Yeah, because, of course, Calvin freaking Ridley, I'd drop him. And, that's the week he decides to, finally have a good game.
We're not going to complain about our fantasy failures too much longer. But when you have this many leagues, only one championship does kind of hurt the soul a little bit. Good luck to everybody out there who is in their championship games, because you definitely deserved it. You've earned it.
Positive thought. We don't have to worry about waivers.
That's true. That's true. I really don't care if I win third place in the 2 games I'm playing you,
or really anything else. Waivers. Don't have to worry about which defense to stream.
Like, there's a few places, like in leagues where there's a third place payout, I would care, but our 16-teamer is just for pride. And
no straight cash homie here.
Yeah, and with all of that being said, I would say we had a better day than Jair Alexander or Russell Wilson. So let's get into the couple big news stories. We'll talk about the more fantasy relevant one first, and that is the benching of Russell Wilson. I don't know if this means he is done in Denver.
That's because of all the dead cap that's attached to his personage.
Yes. Now, he has already come out and basically told the team, I'm willing to restructure the contract to make this work, help our cap situation.
Did you see they had everybody else was in shorts? He was in game day uniform in practice.
That's Russell Wilson for you. But he has been benched the last 2 weeks of the season because an injury risk would lock in his salary for next year, and they don't want to risk it. Again, not a guarantee it's his time in Denver coming to an end, but in the short term, not a good look for Russell Wilson, who has not been the problem for Denver. They have bad wide receivers. Their offensive line's been terrible.
Who's going to be the quarterback going forward from the last
Jared? He went to Jared Stidham. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good because Javonte Williams has had a terrible season. Can't get the ball going on the ground behind that bad offensive line. Russell Wilson's been running for his life a lot.
But they have Jerry Jeudy. They have
Outside of Cortland Sutton, they haven't had a good wide receiver or tight end
sarcasm.
consistently all season long. Cortland Sutton has been a touchdown machine, but even then, he hasn't been spectacular. And then he got concussed in the last game. Russell Wilson hasn't been the problem. It's a dysfunctional, bad offensive team, but he's going to be the scapegoat. He's going to sit for the last 2 games, and Jared Stidham will try and lead the Broncos to the playoffs because they're still mathematically alive.
Boy. And, of course, you mentioned Alexander as
Jair Alexander, the captain that wasn't.
This story just sort of kind of came out of way out of left field. So you're like, what happened? What? Because Packers still in the hunt.
Yeah, Packers 7-8
playoffs. Their offense is already banged up like hell. And so you think they need a functioning defense? So
which they don't have.
Trying to go for the playoffs because the cornerback decided to, against authorization, go out and participate, and he wasn't a captain in the coin toss. Almost messed it up humongously, and of course didn't exactly have what one would call a good game. So now they're punishing themselves by taking out their best asset in defense when they need it next week.
Yeah, Jair Alexander normally would cover one Justin Jefferson. He's going to sit the bench. Apparently, he is from the Charlotte area. So in the game that was in Charlotte, North Carolina, where they were playing the Panthers, he nominated himself to be a fourth captain.
They almost lost to.
Yeah, he nominated himself to be a fourth captain, decided he was going to make the call on the coin toss, and then he said he wanted his defense on the field, which should and probably could have been inferred as we want to kick, not we want to defer to the second half. Fortunately, they cleared that up and they got the ball one of the halves, but basically the theory being they can't let someone just go and make themselves a captain, go out and possibly screw up the coin toss.
LaFleur was tossing many expletives going, what the are you doing?
Yeah, you can't do that, man. You gotta obey the rules. And then afterwards, he admitted he screwed up and did it by himself. So when you saw Jair Alexander suspended by the team one game without reason, you're like, what could that be? And then you hear it, you're like, oh, he's just really dumb. But that was the big news over the weekend, on top of us just being terrible at fantasy this weekend.
Well, it's not entirely terrible. I mean, if you do get into the playoffs, that's better than not getting into the playoffs. But
yeah,
still, you want to play to win the game, as Coach Edwards once said.
Yeah, 2 teams behind me with a losing record. One that has the actually know the picks now. 6 first rounders, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8 in a 10-team league. Also have pick number 11 just for fun. So that one you don't expect to be a good team, and one that just desperately needs to be torn down. It's a dynasty league. It was been competitive this year. Injuries and just fell apart. Everything else 500 or better. You can't complain too much. I can complain because of the tiebreaker thing, as I mentioned above earlier, but outside of that, it was what it is. Not a terrible year, just not going to get as many chances at a championship as I'd like.
Sports Shuffle Audible. What's worse? The worst way to lose in fantasy? Is it going in to Monday knowing you have no chance in bleep, or having that chance in bleep and having a Najee Harris run all of a sudden knock you out, or even as once one happened to me, a Justin freaking Tucker field goal knocking me out? Is losing closely right at the buzzer on the final game or one of the final games, or having the whole day and I has no shot?
Well, I definitely experienced both of those. I had one where the team pooed the bed so bad I was done by about Sunday midday.
When you run into a effing buzzsaw.
Oh, no. It was the worst fantasy week of the season for this team. It put about 75 points in a league where it averaged about 130. Yeah, bad week. I knew I was dead about the middle of the day on Sunday. I went to Monday and went, okay, well, that sucks.
Sort of like did you ever see The Last Starfighter?
No.
Oh, there's this one scene where you have this huge honking flagship that's going against the Gunstar, That's the hero of it, and the huge honking evil baddie ship is caught in a gravity well of the moon, and the evil baddie commander has the eye thing go wing, and his lieutenant's like, "What do we do?" And they're looking as they're going into the moon. We die. That's what the evil baddie commander says. So that's sort of what like those weeks are like.
Yep. I also had our 16 teamer where I went into Monday thinking, hey, if Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk can have a big game combined, I will win in the 16 teamer. Now, I will say this. I was in a position where my 10-team dynasty league would have lost had that happened. However, I lost because of the last garbage time Brandon Ayuk catch in that game, losing by about 1.5 in a full PPR league. And they didn't do enough to make me survive in the 16-teamer. So, yeah, I think having it ripped away from you in the final seconds is much, much worse.
You weren't going Ayuk is on fire. You were going, screw you, Ayuk.
It was one of those, like, if it had been Brandon Ayuk getting the touchdown late from Brock Purdy, the 16-teamers in play, I knew I wasn't getting both. But to have Ayuk go off just enough to cost me a win.
Reminds me of when Najee Harris did that to me.
Yeah, just enough to cost me a win in a league where I was 12-2 dominant all season long, but not enough to get me into the championship in our 16-teamer. That one hurt. Yeah. But anyways, let's go to the recaps for the actual games on the field because, well, they make us slightly less sad as both of our teams got a big win last week.
Oh, boy.
First up.
We already talked about the Thursday game, I believe.
Yeah, first up, real quick recap. Rams 30-22 win over the Saints on Thursday Night Football. Rams 8-7 look like they're going to be going to the playoffs. Saints 7-8 have to win out. Big game against Tampa Bay in week number 17. But that team looks very flawed.
Matthew Stafford was freaking amazing. It was definitely Puka Puka over Cooper Kupp. And yeah, AK had a very rare bad game.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara was on that 10-team league that Ayuk killed me on. All you needed to do is do it a little bit better. Next up, well, I don't know what to make of either one of these teams.
I sense a theme here tonight.
Yeah, there will probably be a lot of that sad noises out of me. The thing I learned this week, before we go to the rest of the games, the thing I learned this week is that there is no team in this league that's not a little bit fraudulent. And the first game that showed me that was the next one. Pittsburgh's 34-11 win over the Cincinnati Bengals. The Pittsburgh Steelers look completely lost, infighting, not blocking, doing everything wrong. Cincinnati looked like they got their crap together with Joe Burrow out. Hey, we've got Browning in. He's been doing really good. We're going to keep it rolling. And then George Pickens looked like Randy frickin' Moss. 4 catches for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he dominates the Cincinnati Bengals, who looked slow. They looked outmatched. And both teams exited 8-7. They're in the quagmire for that 7 seed, where a lot of teams, only one's going to get in that 7 seed. A lot of teams battling for it at 8-7. The Steelers, I don't know what you make of them. Mason Rudolph comes in, saves Christmas for Pittsburgh. I mean, it's a great story, but you picked it this way, so you must have seen it coming. But I thought, hey, the Steelers, they look pretty much done. They get a big win. What do you got for it?
Yeah, just definite some ups and downs for this game. Ups. Higgins, definitely best fantasy option this day. Boyd was flex at best. As you mentioned him, Pickens finally came off the fantasy milk carton. Have to love Coach Tomlin's response when the reporter was asking him, what about Pickens for good performance? What about Pickens? And you gotta love Coach Tomlin's response was, it's appropriate. The Pebble stepped up. Don't sense a lot of love between those two there. So, yeah, and of course, Rudolph, when the crowd is chanting your name, that's probably a good sign. The down, just one big one is Browning due for a regression, but yikes. Probably worst game of his short tenure there. The lights did not get any less bright next week as they're going to Arrowhead. And memo to Mr. Browning, please do not rename Arrowhead Browning Head before playing the game. Just don't.
Yeah, we'll get to the Chiefs' problems here in a little bit. Next up,
Oh boy,
Josh Allen played the Grinch.
He's got problems.
Josh Allen was on my 10-team league. Get lost by Brandon Ayuk's last catch, but that's not important. Like I said, it's going to be a theme. But he played the Grinch and not only stole a win from the Los Angeles Chargers. As a Bills hater, he ruined my day by getting a win in this game at all, not allowing the Dolphins to clinch the division later in the weekend. The Chargers, 5-10, showed a lot of fight, but the Bills, now 9-6, look like they are heading to the postseason, barring losing the last two games to New England, which seems unlikely, in Miami, who might have a ton to play for in week number 18.
As ups, definitely both teams actually competitive. Yeah, Stick shows up. Allen was dealing. Wheel of Gabe, as I like the little eyes that you sent you. Wheel of Gabe went off. You predicted it
Woo!
correctly.
I figured it out.
The down. Diggs led the team with targets, but not a lot to show for it, as Diggs has not reached 100 yards since week number 6.
Ooh.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's a long time for a great wide receiver to not be good.
Yeah, as Eckler has not had a good game since playing Denver. The news for people in their fantasy championships, what are those? I seem to remember one a couple of years ago, but sad noises. As week 17, Chargers are going to Denver. And of course, the most asked question surrounding this game: what the bleep is Peacock, and why do I have to pay $5.99 to watch a freaking game?
Yeah. The bad news for you, if you have Austin Eckler, you don't know what a championship game feels like this year. He was terrible. Peacock, they got lucky. It was a good game, but please don't put any more stupid exclusive games on all these random.
That's like when
Paramount Plus might have one in the playoffs. Like, that's ridiculous. Stop it.
That's like when you have a Rays game, you're trying to find a Rays game, baseball game, going Apple TV. Huh?
Yeah, more on that in my final thought. Anyways, the Bills ruined the day before Christmas Eve by getting a win. And we go to Sunday, where the Falcons, because why not, decided to ride Bijan Robinson because all of his fantasy owners were kicked out in week 15.
You picked a guy in the first round. Use him.
Yeah, if you had Bijan Robinson and got past week 15, you were handsomely rewarded as he dominated this game. The Colts lose 29-10. The Falcons saved their season 7-8. Still have possibilities to not only win the division, but get in as a wild card team. Colts fall to the quagmire of 8-7 in the AFC, battling for
is that the word of the day?
Seed. That is. 8-7 in the AFC South is a three-way tie for first. So division and wild card implications the rest of the way for the Colts, Texans, and Jaguars. But the Colts did not look good in this one. Jonathan Taylor did get a touchdown coming back from the injury, did play the full game, so that is good news. But the Falcons get a big win with Taylor Heinicke at quarterback, and Arthur Smith survives another day.
Yes, the up definitely has to be Bijan. Almost 20 fantasy points, making up for his mind-numbing week 15. He had 14 total yards against the pathetic Panthers. He has a tougher matchup against the Bears in week 17. Hopefully, Arthur Smith stays smart and uses Bijan like this in week 17, but all bets are off. Another definite up, Taylor Heinicke. Just mentioned he might have not won you your semis, but if you had to pivot to him because of, CJ Stroud or one of the 60 million other quarterbacks that seemed to be injured, but he was competent and did not throw any picks. It's clear, though, the Falcons really need other options at quarterback in 2024. The down, yeah, and he just had a bad day all over. The top fantasy performer was Kylan Granson. Yeah, Indy Wilkins in a surprisingly good Raiders team next week. Have fun, Indy.
Anytime Kylan Granson's your best player, something has gone horribly
wrong. Also forgot. Yeah, Mr. London also had sort of a quiet day. Cue the cricket chirpings.
Next up, Jair Alexander tries to screw the Packers. Joe Barry's defense tries to screw the Packers. Bryce Young has his best career day and they lost. And the Packers stay alive in the playoff hunt. They're winners in this one, 33-30 over the 2-13 Carolina Panthers. The Packers at 7-8, still battling for the number 7 seed. If they win out, they have a very good chance of getting it. Big game against Minnesota next week. The Panthers showing some fight against a very bad defense, but at least it's the first time we've looked at Bryce Young's game and went, hey, he looked
He
pretty
didn't
good.
suck.
Yeah.
Ups definitely for this game. Jordan Love, flew for 3 TDs. Packers survived their trip to Carolina somehow. As you also mentioned it, Bryce Young looked like an actual NFL quarterback for the first time this entire season. Holy crap. Romeo Doubs was the best fantasy receiver and might have actually been available in some less deep leagues. And this holy crap, holy bleep, holy spit surprise of the day. Who would have thought DJ Chark would go off in week freaking 16? 698 and 226 fantasy points. Best week of his year in a very mediocre season.
DJ Chark is highly irrelevant in fantasy, but he had a monster week. Next up.
For the downs, real quick.
The downs.
Yeah. Hubbard, yeah. Bit of a down game, but hard to run the ball when it's the second quarter and you're already down 23-10. Yeah. Mingo, 1 target. 9 yards, enough said. And we're going to Texas.
Yeah, next up. There are teams that had George Pickens and Amari Cooper on their starting wide receiver slots that were handsomely rewarded in their losers bracket games this weekend. Because if you had both, you probably weren't in the playoffs. But Amari Cooper, 265 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. Joe Flacco looks like an absolute animal. They benched their starters to start the fourth and had to bring him back, and they just picked up right where they left off. The Browns, 10-5, have not quite clinched a playoff spot, but they're winning in. They're just about to cross the finish line to make the playoffs. The Texans in the 8-7 group, like I mentioned, with hopes at the AFC South still, but that 7 seed wild card.
Quagmire, word of the day. Ding, ding.
Quagmire is still there. The Texans without CJ Stroud, obviously nowhere near as good. The loss of Tank Dell seems to be a big deal. Fortunately, CJ Stroud back at practice, should be back for week number 17. Texans really need to win out to bolster their chance at the playoffs. Things need to break right, but the Browns have a chance to clinch a playoff spot tomorrow night at home against the New York Jets. And Joe Flacco, Amari Cooper, depending on your league format, could have put up almost 100 points combined.
Who would have absolutely thunk it that a team that paid Deshaun Watson $230 million would be riding in looking at the playoffs with wacko for Flacco? Absolutely insane. Crazy. Up, definite, big up. Cooper, 11-15, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, and even a 2-point conversion is cherry on top. It's Cooper's world, just living in it, 50 freaking plus fantasy points. Yeah, the downs. You started Elijah Moore or Jerome Ford. Even Hunt kind of struggling. It was clearly the Flacco Cooper show in week 16. And Nico Collins, he caught 4 or 6 targets, but 18 yards and a touchdown. So a touchdown salvaged his fantasy performance. But yeah, TD was in garbage time. So while germane to fantasy, not a real factor into the game as Collins misses Mr. Stroud.
Yeah, the Texans really do miss their dynamic rookies of Stroud and Tank Dell. I do think getting Stroud back keeps their playoff hopes alive, but they do have to get some big wins the rest of the way, as they will play Tennessee next week and then wrap up the season with, I believe it's a matchup with the Colts that will ultimately knock one of those teams out for sure.
Let's
next
go to Minnesota.
For the first time in the NFC North, the Lions win the division by beating the Vikings 30-24. It's their first division title since 1993, where the Buccaneers were still part of the NFC Central. The Lions' 11-4 mark ties them with the top spot in the NFC, which means they still have a shot at the number 1 overall seed. And while they seem to be a somewhat flawed team, that seems to be the theme at the top, that they have a lot of good components, a lot of good features, but there's a fatal flaw or two for all of them. The Vikings fall to 7-8. They have a must-win game against Green Bay in Week 17. Loser will not make the playoffs for sure. But the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown look great. Sam Laporta, a little bit of a step back, but at 11-4, winning the division. Congratulations to Detroit. Looking forward to a home playoff game for the first time in 30 years. And good on them. But the Vikings, a lot of work left to do.
Yeah, ups definitely. You mentioned them, Sun God and Jahmyr Gibbs ruling the roost for Week 16. Welcome back, Justin Jefferson. 6 of 10 targets, 141 yards, and a touchdown. Nice to see him back, even if you had to play against him. Then Osborne, because of course, Jordan Addison being out, reeled in 5 of 7 targets for 95 yards and a touchdown during Sunday's loss. First TD for Osborne since week number 3. Yeah, the downs, you mentioned Laporta with a little bit of a down game, but who's really been a bit of a disappointment. Jameson Williams, cumulative 990 and whant over 2 games. I think he's had a really rough return since the suspension.
Yeah, we'll see what he does next year. I think if he doesn't break out next year, it's probably just not going to happen.
Gamble at the facility, dude.
Yeah. Next up, the Jets almost blow the biggest lead. Well, they do blow the biggest lead of the weekend, but managed to scrape it back with a 30-28 win over the Washington Commanders. The Commanders were led back.
Actually picked the Commanders.
The Commanders were led back by Jacoby Brissett, who might be starting going forward for the Commanders. The Jets, Breece Hall finally looked like Breece Hall, playing a bad defense like Washington. The Jets' offense looked competent.
Cooper did it on the air. Breece did it on the ground.
Yeah, we'll see how it looks next on Thursday, and just about 24 hours when they play the Cleveland Browns. Better team, much better defense. That Jets offense has it going. At 6-9, the Jets are definitely out of the playoff picture, but with a strong finish, you got to think there's encouraging vibes going into 2024 with the return of Aaron Rodgers. The Commanders 4-11. They're looking at a top 5 draft pick and almost certainly going to be going to the quarterback well with a new head coach in tow.
Yeah, up and down. This is sort of a weird one is when your best player is Chris Rodriguez, has to go for an MRI the following day. That's pretty much representative of the Commanders season. Just, all right, they had a good game. They really did good, and they're injured. Up, definitely, Breece Hall. Can you just imagine the poor fantasy manager who had to play someone who started Amari Cooper and Breece Hall? And down, anybody who thought Sam Howell was the answer in DC did well for a little while there, but his time is done.
Just imagine someone in Week 15 having to start George Pickens, Amari Cooper, Breece Hall, and Bijan Robinson, getting knocked out of the playoffs, and then going to week number 16 and dismantling their opponent in humiliating fashion.
How it works out, and you're yelling at your team, going, "Why did you do this bleep last week?"
Yeah, fantasy football.
And all other words I can't say.
Yeah, next up, Seattle's 20-17 win over the Tennessee Titans. The Seahawks 8-7 look like a playoff-bound team if they can just keep together the last 2 weeks of the season. Derrick Henry, 2 touchdowns this one passing and 1 on the ground, so not a bad game.
Was Derrick Henry better than Tannehill?
Yeah, I mean, the Titans are 5-10. They're definitely not anywhere near the playoffs. We got to expect some big changes next offseason. Derrick Henry's a free agent. Ryan Tannehill's got to be out the door soon. But the Seahawks, DK Metcalf, like I said, I think he's going to have a monster Week 17 because that would just be the greatest way to troll my garbage teams that lost this week of all time. And the Seahawks at 8-7, they do look like a playoff team.
Another quagmire.
Yeah, well, the NFC is not quite the quagmire as the AFC. The Seattle Seahawks play Pittsburgh next week in a very big game for both teams because if Pittsburgh loses, they're done. If Seattle loses, they have a little more wiggle room. The NFC is a little softer in the middle. But the Seahawks, after a couple big wins, right back in control of their own destiny.
Up, definitely balanced play for a W for the Hawks. Probably didn't help out their fantasy owners, but, because balanced play doesn't mean 1 or 2 people really hog all the fantasy food on the table. Yeah, that's good for reality football, but not really so much for fantasy football, but W keeps things very much alive for Mr. Geno Smith. Up for Derrick Henry. The King returns after a bummer week 15. A little bit of a touchdown pass as a bonus. Yeah, the down. Sorry, Hopkins managers. Woof. 20 yards, 4 targets. Yikes.
Ooh. Yeah, not great. Next up, your
Going
Tampa
to
Bay
Raymond James
Buccaneers.
Stadium. And
Dominant.
where the game was for the Jaguars, stop. He's already dead.
Yeah, the Bucs were up 30-0 in this game, end up winning 30-12 after they called the dogs off, essentially. Baker Mayfield has as many wins already this season with 2 weeks left. Yeah, Baker Mayfield, 8 wins on the season, already as many as Tom Brady had in his year last year with the Buccaneers. You got to think the Bucs
thinking of bringing him back seems to be.
They got to make it a priority to bring him and Mike Evans back, work on this defense, work on this line. This is not a bad setup they've got. They just have to keep it going. The Jaguars are starting to fall apart. They look like the Titans did the end of last year. We lost 7 straight to lose their playoff spot. Trevor Lawrence, another injury, this time a shoulder. So he's had the ankle, the concussion, the shoulder in 3 consecutive weeks.
Separate clipboard for all his injuries.
The Jaguars fall to 8-7. They still have first place in the AFC South by way of the tiebreakers, but they are in that AFC quagmire at 8-7. We'll go over the full standings here in a little bit. The Jaguars, though, fading fast as they were about 4 weeks ago in contention for the number 1 overall seed. Now they're battling just for their playoff lives. The Buccaneers at 8-7 pretty much could clinch the division with a win next week over the New Orleans Saints. I think the Falcons have an outside shot of catching them in a tiebreaker should they not beat Carolina week 18 if they win next week. But the Buccaneers just have to beat the Saints, and then hopefully they will have the division and then can just kind of get ready for hosting a playoff game. Yeah, both of these teams exited 8-7. Both have playoff aspirations.
Yeah, Lattimore's coming back for that game so we can say hi to Mr. Evans. As up, definitely Evans won the game, and Mr. Rachaad White did his thing again. Maybe not quite as much as usual, but still definitely enough to hopefully help you, unlike me, propel you to the next round. Hashtag sad noises. As Ridley has his second best week of the year. Finally shows up in the loss. Figures after I freaking dropped him down. Jacksonville struggling into the December stretch, and sort of like that quote from Back to the Future when Marty McFly goes, "Hey, I've seen this one before."
Mm-hmm. All right, next up, a game nobody wanted to watch. The Chicago Bears win 27-16 over the Arizona Cardinals. Mm-hmm. James Conner's still very, very good at football, but the rest of that offense looks like it is lost. Hollywood Brown did not play in this game. Not like it would have mattered.
Inglewood Brown.
Yeah. The Bears, though, 6-9, still have a snowball's chance and heck of making the playoffs as they are still mathematically alive. Pretty much 1% chance the rest of the way, though, as the Bears are starting to get it going, leaving questions about the future of Justin Fields and what looks to be the number overall pick they're going to get from Carolina.
Yeah, definite solid day up for Mr. Conner, as you mentioned. 12 carries, 45 yards, 5 catches on 5 targets for 67 yards. And yeah, if you're still alive for the championship, unlike us, you're starting him. And if you happen to have him as and Fields, Herbert, and Kmet pretty much led the way for dismantling the Cards, something that they're used to in 23. As the down, McBride, after 2 solid weeks against San Francisco and Pittsburgh, this is a bit of a letdown from the waiver wonder.
Yeah. We'll see what happens with both Kyler Murray and Justin Fields in the offseason. I think Kyler Murray is kind of playing his way out of favor with Arizona, the new coaching staff, but Justin Fields might be earning another shot. Next up, one of the biggest games of the week.
Go to South Beach.
And it comes down to the whistle, the final buzzer, where the Dolphins win 22-20. Cowboys couldn't get anything going offensively until the very end of this game, where the Dolphins struggled to stop them. But the Dolphins, on the back of 5 field goals from Jason Sanders and a very good defensive performance and some bad plays by the Cowboys, get a win. They clinch a playoff spot at 11-4. Ooh, breaking news. Russell Wilson expecting to be cut by the Broncos in March. Just breaking. He is expecting it. But the Dolphins get this win. They are 11-4. They do clinch a playoff spot with a win. They give themselves the ability to clinch the AFC East with a win in either of the next 2 weeks. And a win against Baltimore gives them the inside track for the number 1 overall seed. The Cowboys, with this loss, most likely have doomed themselves to the number 5 seed in the NFC. They're now a game behind Philadelphia, and they do not have the tiebreaker in hand. So the Cowboys, couple tough losses back-to-back weeks. Again, it seems like every team's got their fraudulentness. We'll talk more about a couple other teams here in a minute. But the Dolphins, back-to-back December wins, a win over a winning team. At least things look like they're going a little bit better for the Dolphins.
Yeah, it was solid day for Lamb and Prescott in the close loss after those two. Not much to feast on fantasy for Week 16 as far as the Cowboys go. Tyreek just doing Tyreek things unless he is listed as out. You're starting him, and Tua was solid with 0 turnovers as the Dolphins beat a team with a winning record, so that narrative can at least rest for 1 week. The Downs, yeah, RB's Mostert was on his way to a great day, but injuries reared their ugly head yet again, and Pollard just rushed 12 times for 38 yards and caught his lone target for 5 yards in the loss from the Dolphins. So, not a good day for running backs.
No, Jalen Waddle injured in this one. Not great. Looks like he might be out for the rest of the regular season, but also not ruled out for this week. To finish that Russell Wilson things, before we talk about the Broncos game, Russell Wilson is expected to be cut by the Denver Broncos in March per league sources. For almost 2 months, the quarterback has been starting, knowing the organization was most likely going to move on from him after the season. Worst trade in NFL history, possibly the Seahawks and the Broncos trade for Russell Wilson, at least on the Denver side of things. As the Broncos lose to the New England Patriots on Saturday night or Sunday night on Christmas Eve.
It was sort of like we weren't sure what day it was this weekend.
Yeah, it's weird. Today is Wednesday. It feels like it's a Monday and a Tuesday and a Thursday. It's weird. The Patriots, 4-11, get a win. They're in contention for one of the top 5 picks. They are almost certainly going to be looking at a new quarterback, but Bailey Zappi has made some progress the last couple of weeks, so just a slim chance, but maybe they're starting to turn the corner, and maybe they think Zappi's the guy. I don't know. The Broncos at 7-8. Now, if they're going to cut Russell Wilson, you got to think, what are they going to do at quarterback here, Joel?
Yeah,
I mean, 7-8 is not an early enough pick to get a guy.
You're already dealing with dead cap. So you can't trade. I mean, is Jared Stidham going to be the new starter? I mean, they got to do something that there's just has to be somebody out there that's maybe being a little bit of a problem for another team. AKA, we remember Baker Mayfield went from the Browns to Carolina to the Rams and then ended up in Tampa after not having a fun time in Carolina and has found a home in Tampa. So maybe there's another disgruntled cornerback out there that's not having a good time where he is, and he's looking for a home.
I mean, you look at a team like a Washington or a New England that's got, Washington have new coaches, and assuming Bill Belichick's back with the Patriots, a decent coach there, it's possible he gets traded in the offseason. They might just say, hey, you're not going to trade him because we're going to cut him. He can go wherever he wants. There's going to be some teams lining up for him. He hasn't been the problem, and this is just a bad offensive team overall. But Washington, New England, Arizona could be in play. Minnesota could be in play because Kirk Cousins' future there is up in the air. So I think there's some options for him. I would be surprised if they outright cut him. I think they'd be better off trying to trade him, avoid some of that dead cap, get that contract, move on to another team, and maybe get some draft pick assets back because, well, frankly, at 7-8, you're not going to get it. The 26-23 league loss essentially ends the Broncos' chance at the playoffs. They still have a mathematical chance, but they need so much to go right on top of them winning out the last 2 weeks that it's just unrealistic. The Patriots, again, 4-11. They get the win. They go and play a Buffalo team. They've already beaten with a lot for Buffalo to play for, but we saw Buffalo struggle with the Chargers, so maybe there's an upset brewing in week number 17. I don't know, but the Broncos, looks like their future is going to be much different than they would have expected it to be.
Yeah, you mentioned him. Zappi has definitely he's a huge up, has definitely had an interesting fantasy playoffs run. And the other up definitely is Ezekiel Elliott. He's been a pleasant pickup if for some reason he wasn't drafted or was available. He has definitely been a steal. And yeah, the down Broncos' chances of getting in. I understand Wilson for benching Wilson for a number of reasons, but yeah, just placing in a backup when you really need wins. It's just hard to understand reality football, and you're dealing with the front office and all of the economics. So it's just very confuzzling. And the other down was not Sappy's reaction to the winning field goal, which was filled with a ton of emotion. But then you saw Belichick, just not surprising, stoic as ever.
Yeah. Next up, we go to Christmas Day, where the Raiders beat the Chiefs 20-14. Travis Kelce on the naughty list, tossing his helmet on the sideline.
You all got problems.
Yeah. Isaiah Pacheco wishes for Christmas he could keep his helmet on and had a training table that didn't fall apart underneath him. And Taylor Swift wishes she was anywhere but the losing booth. As the Raiders win without completing a pass for the second, third, or fourth quarters of this game, the Chiefs fall to 9-6. Their opportunity to win the AFC's number one seed has been eliminated. In fact, if the Raiders win out, Chiefs lose out, the Raiders would still win that division at 9-8. Crazier things have happened, and the Chiefs look absolutely dysfunctional. The Chiefs play Cincinnati next week. Cincinnati has a lot to play for. And frankly, even though Cincinnati looked really bad last week, as of right now, I think I trust how that team looks over the last few games. Kansas City's 2-4 in their last 6. Cincinnati's at least been better than that. So Christmas was not kind to Kansas City. The Raiders, though, looking impressive, and I think Antonio Pierce needs to keep that job long term.
Yeah, a definite huge up for the Raiders. DST dominated, as you mentioned, even though AFC was mostly invisible after the first quarter. Raiders D just clearly the MVP for the win as they freaking dominated the Chiefs. And yeah, the one big down is, we had a couple weeks where everyone was talking about the Mahomes temper tantrum, but Travis Kelce definitely outdid him, as there was apparently a fake punt play, and he wasn't a part of it. So he threw a tantrum.
That's not how it goes. They came off the field on third down. He threw his helmet during the fake punt play. The fake punt was successful. He goes running to get his helmet, and Andy Reid grabs it out of the trainer's hand and says, "Don't give him that. I need to chew his ass out before I put him back on the field." But he threw that thing with some force. If that hit somebody, that would hurt like hell. Because he threw that with vitriol, and it had paint from the bench on the helmet after.
That could have been a serious assault.
Yeah, you hit a non-player, you hit an NFL personnel. Yeah, not good.
The Chiefs they've gone from world champs to a Swiftie sideshow.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but as soon as Taylor Swift got involved with this team, it seems like Travis Kelce's fallen off the face of the earth. This whole offense can't get anything going. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but between all the commercials and the distraction with Taylor Swift, it does seem like this team just does not have the focus it usually has. Looks like they're not having fun. And of course, the wide receivers not named Rashee Rice on this team are complete trash, which is not helping things. But the Chiefs, 9-6. They should still make the playoffs. They need to win one of their last two to clinch the division.
Don't know if they're going back to the Super Bowl if they're like this, though.
But right now, it would be the Chiefs versus the Bills in round number 1. I don't know anybody who's going to be like, yeah, Kansas City's got that one. It just doesn't seem realistic.
You would think you would pick the Bills because they have more passion, they have more fire, they have more want it than the Chiefs, who they're just falling apart. Travis Kelce with the temper tantrum, Mahomes going off about the call, and Kadarius Toney, Kadarius Toney, of course,
healthy scratch last week.
He's probably going, yeah, can I not be on the field so nobody knows I exist for a week?
Yeah. All right, next up, the Eagles win 33-25 over the New York Giants. They tried to blow this game, but they couldn't. Tommy DeVito benched in this one. Tyrod Taylor will be starting next week for the Giants. The Eagles, though, man, for a team that's 11-4, they look the worst of any of those 10-win teams on the season overall, I think. They haven't looked convincing in probably 7-8 weeks. I think the last convincing win might have been against Miami, 31-17, where the refs were completely on the side of the Eagles to a tune of 10 penalties for the Dolphins, none against the Eagles. But the Giants showing a lot of grit, showing a lot of fight, coming up just short. But I think there's more concern for the Eagles following that 3-game losing streak to struggle at home against a bad division rival and have to survive a scare.
Yeah, because in this game, it's just you're looking up at. I know the Eagles definitely seem more often. That's just a theme in all of December, but I think Hurts did rebound at least from the shocker of the Monday Night Football loss, then the being ill, the not congratulating Drew Lock. So kudos to Taylor for having the Giants make a fight of it, though. You're just starting to worry at all of a sudden. Start of the season, Eagles just looked like an absolute juggernaut, and now they are looking real mortal. And the end of the Ballad of Tommy DeVito is apparently it was a nice story while it lasted, but it is now Tyrod Taylor time.
Yeah, Tyrod Taylor coming back. Giants looking forward to the offseason. We'll see what happens to Daniel Jones and a lot of other pieces on this offense. Next up, the Super Bowl preview that was a dud is Brock Purdy. Brock pooed the bed. Yeah, Brock Purdy, block turnover. 4 interceptions for Brock Purdy.
He was pretty bad.
Brock Purdy just needed to not be absolute trash to not have me lose in the 16-teamer, but he couldn't do that. Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, will look much, much better. The defense was swarming. Offense was very competent in this one. 33-19 win over the San Francisco 49ers in a game that really wasn't that close. A couple garbage time drives by Sam Darnold made this look a little bit better than it was. The Ravens, 12-3, first place in the NFL on record. Big game against Miami next week. With a win, would clinch the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. With a loss, comes down to the final week. But the Ravens look like a true Super Bowl contender with the 49ers. They've been very, very good, but this was not their week. And if they show up like this in the playoffs, that NFC is wide open.
Yeah, just a big up for Lamar. He earned all of his money here. He absolutely dominated the air and on the ground. Some of those plays, as you think, okay, this drive is over. He just absolutely does a magic trick that you're going, okay, this is vintage Lamar. He is switched on, and Ravens DST just absolutely smacked the 49ers around. You had that crazy 5-0 baseball score to start for the Niners, and all of a sudden, Ravens just flipped the switch and script, and suddenly and quickly, Purdy and crew have some questions to do and answers to search for going forward, limping away from week 60 as just, holy crap, maybe Purdy was even then knocked out of the game. Late Sam Darnold took over for him because he ended up getting a stinger. So it was just a steamroller all the way around. So much for that quote-unquote Super Bowl preview. It wasn't very favorable for the 49ers. As the Ravens just looked dominating on both sides of the ball.
Give the ball to Christian McCaffrey. When you're struggling to pass the ball, give the ball to Christian McCaffrey. Let him do his thing. That was what the 49ers didn't do in this game. They get the loss. Anyways, let's go to the standings. We'll start in the NFC because, more of that is looking clear because 4 teams have clinched a playoff spot. 49ers, Eagles, Lions all have clinched a playoff spot. The Niners and Lions have clinched their division. All teams are 11-4. Niners 1, Eagles 2, Lions 3 as of right now. And the Cowboys at 10-5 have clinched a wild card spot at a minimum. The rest of the conference, the Buccaneers currently 4th place, leading the AFC South or NFC South. If they get a win over New Orleans, it's a virtual certainty they will win the NFC South. In fact, we'll go over some clinching scenarios here shortly. For the Rams, they're number 6 at 8-7. They play the Giants next week. With a win, they pretty much lock up a playoff spot, especially with some of the teams behind them possibly losing. Seahawks at 8-7, also with a win, very likely to make the playoffs as the 7th seed. 8, 9, 10, 11, all at 7-8. Vikings, Packers, Saints, and Falcons. They have to win. Packers, Vikings, one of them will definitely lose or they'll tie. So losers out in that one. If the Saints lose to the Buccaneers, they're pretty much done. Falcons, they play the Bears. They got to win that game. The Bears, though, with about 1% chance to make the playoffs with a win over Atlanta, sitting at 6-9 as a 12 seed. Mathematically eliminated the Giants, the Commanders, the Cardinals, and the Panthers. In the AFC, 2 teams have now clinched the playoff spot, the Baltimore Ravens and the Miami Dolphins. The Ravens Still have not clinched the division, but at 12-4, 12-3, you got to think that's on the horizon. It takes a win and a Cleveland loss at any time this season. Dolphins, with the win over the Dallas Cowboys, have clinched at the minimum a wild card spot. And again, one win or one Bills loss out of the last 2 weeks, and they would clinch the AFC East. In third, the Kansas City Chiefs. They play Cincinnati next week. With a win, they're pretty much locked in, but a loss at least brings a little bit of risk into play, but they're pretty confident to make the playoffs. The Jaguars, currently a 68% chance to make the playoffs. They're at 8-7. A loss drops them to 39%. They play Carolina, so a win is more likely. That raises them to 82%. The Browns, almost certain in the playoffs. Again, they need a win or a loss by pretty much any of the 8-7 teams to clinch the playoff spot. They play the Jets in week number 17. They're the 5 seed. The Bills got everything to go right for them last week. Currently an 88% chance to make the playoffs. The Patriots are the week 17 opponent, so if they lose, 50-50 shot with a win. They almost guarantee their spot and possibly can clinch this week. The Colts currently sit at number 7 over some tiebreaker teams. 50-50 shot to making the playoffs. They play the Raiders with a win. They become a 70% chance. Out on the outside looking, the Texans play the Titans. They're in the 8 seed at 8-7. The Bengals play the Chiefs at 8-7. Steelers 8-7 playing the Seattle Seahawks. The Raiders 7-8 play those Colts, so a big game for both teams there. And the Broncos, who are not going to be starting Russell Wilson, 8-7 play the Chargers. With a win, they would still have a 12% chance to make the playoffs, but I think without Russell Wilson, that goes a little bit lower. Already eliminated the Jets, Titans, Chargers, and Patriots. Let's look at some clinching scenarios because, well, it's that time of the year. With 2 weeks left, the Dolphins and Ravens, like I said, have already clinched. So the Ravens can clinch the AFC North title with a win or a Cleveland loss. They can clinch the number 1 overall seed in the AFC with a win. No other way, Bill. They're playing the team that's close to them. The Bills have 5 different scenarios to clinch the playoffs with a win. They involve a minimum of 2 of the 8-7 teams losing in week number 17. Very possible they get this, but you never know. If they do not win, those odds go down considerably. The Cleveland Browns clinch with a win or a loss by either Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Jacksonville, or a combination with Houston and Indianapolis. Jaguars can clinch the division this week, even though they've been playing bad. Jacksonville win needs Indy and Houston to both lose behind them. The Chiefs can clinch the division with a win or a Las Vegas loss. The Dolphins, again, can clinch the division with a win or a Buffalo loss. Cannot clinch number 1 overall seed, but with a win over Baltimore would have the inside track, just need to win in week number 18. In the NFC, the Rams clinch a playoff win with a win and a Seattle loss, or a win and a Green Bay, Minnesota tie. So they are very, very close there. Philadelphia will clinch the NFC East with a win and a Dallas loss, or a tie and a Dallas loss. So as long as Dallas loses, they have a very good chance of clinching the division. San Francisco clinches the number 1 overall seed with a win, a Detroit loss, and a Philadelphia loss. Seems fairly unlikely in my opinion. Seattle clinches the playoff berth with a win and a Green Bay, Minnesota tie. So a lot of tie talk here. Tampa Bay clinches the division and a playoff berth with a win or a tie and a Falcons loss. So that's our clinching scenarios for week number 17. Lot of possibilities, and it's only going to get crazier as we get to week number 18. First up, though, are the Browns on Thursday night with a chance to clinch with that win over the New York Jets. For the Jets, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, the only 2 you should even be considering. Even then, this is a very tough matchup, so tread lightly. But maybe, just maybe, they're figuring something out on offense because they were much better last week. For Cleveland, Amari Cooper, Joe Flacco, and David Njoku. Flacco is maybe the most risky because the Jets have been good against quarterbacks, but you cannot bench Amari Cooper or David Njoku with how they've been playing lately. Can't trust the running game, but if you're super desperate, Jerome Ford, the Jets are softer against the run. Maybe it works out. Cleveland has a chance to clinch the playoffs. They have a chance to lock up the 5 seed if everything really goes correct for them. The Jets are done. Joel, do you see the Browns clinching their spot?
I can definitely see it. I know the Jets definitely have a good defense, but Cleveland's good on both sides of the ball and providing everybody's firing on all cylinders. If you can, I know it would be a very improbable to expect Amari Cooper to have 2 weeks like that in a row. But even if he just has half of that, that can help that team get past the Jets. That Jets are just a Jekyll and Hyde team. They have a week where they can get by a very bad Commanders team, and all of a sudden you have like a game against the Dolphins where they ended up shutting them out. And I think that's more the game we tend to see here, as Cleveland definitely has an offense and they definitely have a very potent defense. And I'd be surprised to see the Jets get into double digits, and I'm definitely getting down with the Browns.
Yeah, I think Cleveland, I think they're on to something with Joe Flacco and how this offense operates. And the Jets, while the good defense, they haven't held up lately in every game. They look bad against the second half Washington Commanders. They got stomped by Miami a couple weeks back. I think this is going to be a game where Cleveland just celebrates the fact they have a decent team. Cleveland, Detroit, both in the playoffs for it seems like the first time in forever. And I think Cleveland gets the win as well. Both of us had a 10-6 pick 'em week, so Joel still remains up by a dozen and a half games. So with that, let's go to final thoughts with Joel.
As my final thoughts, getting back to what was breaking news, is the Packers, of course, suspended their best player for Week 17 because he went out, not as a team captain, and almost messed up the coin toss. So now Pack rolls into Week 17 without their best cornerback on defense. As I said before, they need all hands on deck. That offense is definitely hobbled and injured, and definitely defense ditto. So have why suspend them? Have a retroactive suspension that'll kick in next.
He'll be back. We'll let him talk more about retroactive suspensions here when he comes back. It's weird when he drops during final thoughts. That's a new one. I don't think he's ever dropped during final thought. He'll hopefully be back soon. Yep, here he goes. All right, Joel, coming back in. Tell us more about that retroactive suspension, because the internet retroactively suspended your final thought.
Okay, as I'll start off with. So now the Pack roll into Week 17. I think that's about where I was when I was suspended.
Like I said, the last thing I heard was retroactive suspension. Just
yeah. So Packs were rolling into Week 17 without their best player on defense, and my question is, why suspend him? Find him, have a retroactive suspension that kicks in the future, and you really need all hands on deck, especially when it's a game against Minnesota with everything that's on the line. And I'm just questioning that decision. I mean, I know, contract easy for me to say, detrimental to the team, but still, when you need your players, you need them out there. And I just kind of question this decision. That's my final thought.
maybe it's just they kind of don't think this is a playoff quality team, and they want to set the message now. No player is above the team and the rules of the team. He did something that could have cost him a game. So it's a little aggressive. I think finding him into the ground would have been better than suspending him, given what's going on this weekend with Justin Jefferson and the Vikings playing them, but not my decision. My final thought is going to be, can we stop adding random games to random TV channels and streaming packages? Because everybody likes streaming services because they can pick and choose what they want, pay for what they want, not have to pay the extreme high cost of cable or satellite to get it. And now, if you're an NFL fan, you now have to have Peacock, you have to have Amazon Prime, you have to have Paramount, who we think has an exclusive playoff game.
I've got an additional final thought.
And then YouTube TV, of course, took over the NFL Sunday Ticket, which nothing against YouTube TV. It's a good product. I've seen a lot of the Sunday Ticket stuff this year that I didn't have to pay for because someone else did, and then I got caught for not being in Boston. But that's a different problem altogether. But we're getting to the point where if you want to watch the football season from start to finish, you have to have 4 or 5 different streaming services, which starting to add up to the same point of having basic cable, which kind of defeats the purpose of trying to cut the cord and to put it all on streaming. If you pay for YouTube TV, you should be getting every football game, no matter what, because that's what you're paying for. But that's a whole different thing. Can we please just stop putting these games on all of these random, no-name, who cares apps? If you Amazon Prime, most people have Amazon Prime for different reasons. You have it. If you want to pay for YouTube TV and the NFL Sunday Ticket, go for it. But other than that, you should be able to get all the games with at least the basic TV, the national ones at least. But no, Bills Chargers on Peacock, and I think Paramount Plus has a playoff game. So hopefully that does not come to fruition. Anyways, you had a bonus final thought?
Yeah, because you mentioned Amazon Prime, and they're actually rolling out now an additional charge only for Amazon shows that are like Amazon originals that you apparently now will have to pay like I think an additional $2.99 not to get ads during the Amazon show. So this isn't like if you're having one Amazon channel like a Paramount Plus or something else. This is Amazon intellectual property. That's an Amazon original, but this is an additional fee that they're tacking on in addition to the Amazon Prime that you already had. That's insane.
Just remember, the greedy people who run all this stuff will get your money one way or another. They will screw you out of it if they can, and then they'll tell you why capitalism is the greatest thing that's ever happened because it benefits them. And if it benefits them, it has to benefit you. But don't listen to any other theories or thoughts on anything because it's definitely wrong. Definitely wrong. Give me your money, please, please, please. That's our time, as that went to a different place. I am flying Ryan Yokers along with
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verlin.
We better be back later this weekend to do the rest of week number 17's picks.
Yes.
I think we still have one
We will
Saturday
hopefully
game.
have recovered from our fantasy sadness behind that.
I doubt it. Fantasy sadness lasts for months. And it came a week early this year, damn it. Anyways, we're going to be sad for a little while. Last weekend of 2023. Going to try and enjoy that. Last weekend of fantasy football, even though it's sad that there's a lot of third place games for us and bad performances.
And then a crazy week 18 that you wonder how many teams are resting everybody.
Yeah, we're going to be quickly going into the NFL playoffs and saying goodbye to football before we know it for the long, sad off season of 6 or 7 months.
I'm hoping the Bucs will just somehow get past the first round. Maybe. Hopefully.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But anyways, that's our time. And with that, we go.